The galactic map stretched across the stars like a glowing chart of power and pride. Empires had marked their borders, traders had drawn their routes, and explorers had traced the unknown. But in every version of the map, in every library and council chamber, the bright line stopped at the same place. It was a dark boundary at the edge of human space, and beyond it the map was blank. No routes, no stations, no symbols, only silence for generations. Alien scholars and leaders asked why. Some believed it was superstition. Some believed it was a human trick. Yet the truth was that the map was not made by humans. The warning was carved into the records of the galaxy by others, races older and greater, who agreed on one thing: no one should go further. No one should cross into the human realm. Stories spread in whispers across taverns and starports. The tales of human wars, the strange way they fought, the fire in their spirit but time dulled memory, and younger species laughed at the warnings. To them it was a ghost story, an old tale to scare children. They said humans were a small power, clinging to their cluster of planets, their fleets few in number, their technology simple compared to the great empires. One such empire was ruled by a proud warlord. His ships were massive, his armies endless, and his arrogance greater than both. He looked at the map with cold eyes and sneered. How could a blank space stop him? How could a warning written in fear mean more than his hunger for conquest? His advisors begged caution, but he silenced them with one command. He would cross the line, he would invade the unknown. The fleet was glorious as it moved, lines of warships glowing with power, banners of conquest shining from their hulls. They crossed the border with laughter, mocking the stories of humans, mocking the silence of the map, and in the beginning, it seemed as if the humans were nothing. There were no defenses, no patrols, only empty space. But then the silence grew heavier. The void seemed to press against the ships, and the laughter faded. Their sensors picked up shadows that were not there, faint signals that disappeared when scanned. The warlord told his fleet to ignore it, yet even he felt a chill. Still they pushed forward, until one night in deep space, the first battleship vanished. No warning, no explosion, no distress call. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The warlord's admirals shouted that it was a system failure, a trick of navigation, but soon another ship vanished. Then another. Panic began to spread. The warlord ordered all ships to broadcast their might, to show their strength, and yet the darkness around them gave no answer. Finally they saw it, just for a moment. A glimmer in the void. Small ships, human ships, but moving faster than their eyes could follow. Before the alien gunners could react, another warship exploded in fire. The fleet screamed in confusion. The humans did not send messages, did not demand surrender, they only struck, then vanished again into the night. The warlord roared in anger, demanding the fleet fight back. But the human ships never stayed. They were ghosts hitting from every side, vanishing before return fire. One by one, his mighty ships turned into burning wrecks. The warlord sent desperate orders to retreat, but by then it was too late. The map's warning had been real. When the survivors tried to send messages back to their empire, none were answered. Their signals were swallowed by silence. Weeks later, no one heard from the fleet again. No wreckage was found. No escape pods recovered. It was as if the ships had never existed. Whispers spread quickly across the galaxy. The Forbidden Line had claimed another victim. Alien councils fell into fear. Traders stopped near the border and turned back. No one dared cross again. They all remembered the words carved in the map. The words not written by humans but by those who had seen them fight. The map stops at human space. It is not a border of fear for mankind. It is a border of fear for everyone else, and those who ignored it vanished into silence, leaving only the chilling lesson, the warning that the galaxy should have never forgotten. Those who crossed into human space faced justice, and justice came without mercy. The stars shone quietly over the dark edge of the map. The forbidden edge, and the galaxy held its breath, wondering if one day another fool would dare to cross. And if humanity was still waiting in the shadows, unseen, patient, ready to strike again, rumors spread faster than light across the galaxy. They traveled with traders, smugglers, and soldiers who spoke in low voices when the lights dimmed. No one dared to say too much, but the whispers always carried the same name, humans. Long ago, before the maps had been marked with the warning line, humans had already made their mark on history. They were not the oldest race nor the strongest, but they fought in ways the galaxy could not understand. Where most species waged war with order, codes, and rules, humans fought with chaos, with surprise, with fury that could not be measured. Aliens who had once faced them told stories that seemed impossible. Fleets outnumbered 3-1 still came home beaten and broken. Entire invasions ended because humans refused to surrender. Even when their cities burned and their ships were torn apart, they kept fighting, as if pain itself was their weapon. In one tale, a species called the Draxus sent an armada of 1,000 ships to take a single human colony. The battle was meant to be easy, swift, but the humans resisted for years. They fought on the ground, in the skies, and in the shadows of space. The Draxus lost more ships than they had ever lost to any empire. When they finally retreated, they swore to never fight humans again. In another story, the Jirel Empire captured human prisoners, believing they had broken their spirit. But the humans escaped using nothing but stolen tools and fire from the ship's own engines. They burned half the vessel down and walked into the void without fear. When the survivors were found clinging to shattered lifeboats, they were still laughing for generations. These stories were passed down like warnings, but memories fade. Empires rise and fall, and pride blinds the young. Many councils began to say the stories were lies, exaggerations told by cowards who had lost. Some called it propaganda, saying humans spread these myths themselves to scare others away. But not everyone doubted. There were species who remembered clearly. They were old, scarred, and silent. They were the ones who had fought humanity and survived. And when the maps were drawn, they demanded one thing: that the line be marked, that the warning be written, do not cross. Yet time makes fools of the arrogant. New powers had never seen a human fleet, never fought a human soldier, and so they began to mock the silence. They said humans were backward. They said humans hid behind fear one by one. Voices rose in laughter across the stars until finally, one empire broke the silence completely. The Corval Empire was young and burning with ambition. Its leaders hungry for conquest. Its fleets fresh and eager. They looked at the forbidden edge and saw only opportunity. Why should they believe in ghost stories? Why should they fear a people who no longer showed themselves? The Corval Council gathered, their chambers filled with the glow of maps and stars. The advisors spoke of danger. They spoke of the lost fleets, but the warlords laughed. They said the galaxy had been tricked for centuries, that the humans were nothing but a shadow. They declared that the border was not a warning but an invitation, so they began to plan. Their fleets would march into human space. They would break the silence. They would claim new worlds, new resources, and prove themselves greater than the legends of old. They told their soldiers it would be easy, that the humans were weak, and they told their people to celebrate, because glory was coming. But across the galaxy, those who remembered did not celebrate. They sat in silence. They prayed in silence, and they whispered once more, do not cross the line. Meanwhile, in the dark of space, humanity was watching, unseen, patient. They had not forgotten the wars of the past. They had not forgotten the empires that once tried to break them. They saw the Corval fleets gathering. They listened to the laughter of their leaders. And they waited, for humanity did not fight for conquest. They did not fight to expand. They fought only when others forced them, and when they fought, they ended wars completely. The rumors were more than just stories. They were truths carved in blood and fire. And soon the Corval would learn what the Draxus had learned, what the Jirel had learned, what every empire who ignored the map had learned. The humans were not demons. They were not monsters. They were simply human, but that was enough to bring fear to the stars. The galaxy trembled as the Corval fleets prepared to move. No one dared to stop them. No one dared to speak against them. And yet in every corner of space, hearts were filled with dread, because they all knew justice was coming. And it would come in silence. The forbidden edge was waiting. The map was waiting. And the humans were waiting. And the galaxy once again held its breath, wondering if the warnings would be ignored, and if another empire would be erased from history. The council chamber of the Corval Empire glowed with arrogance and ambition. Its walls were filled with banners of conquest, the air heavy with the scent of victory yet to come. Dozens of alien warlords sat in their jeweled chairs, their eyes bright with greed as the great map of the galaxy shimmered in front of them. They pointed and laughed at the strange empty space that stretched beyond the line marked in crimson, human space. It is only myth, one of the generals said, his voice filled with scorn. A story told by weaklings to hide their fear. The council roared with agreement, their laughter echoing in the chamber like thunder. Another general struck the table with his clawed hand. For centuries they hid behind silence. For centuries the galaxy obeyed a warning no one understood. But we are not afraid. We are Corval, and we take what we desire. The emperor himself stood, his towering form covered in golden armor. His crown glinting like fire, he raised a hand and silence fell. His voice was calm but carried power. The galaxy mocks us, they think us young. They think us foolish. They call us cowards for stopping at this border. Tonight we end the laughter. Tonight we prove our strength. He turned toward the glowing map. And with one sweep of his hand he erased the warning line. The chamber erupted in cheers. The Emperor declared, "Tomorrow, we march into human space, and when we return, we shall return with new worlds, new slaves, and new glory." The celebration spread across the Empire like fire. Cities lit their skies with fireworks. Soldiers marched in the streets, children sang of victory. Every heart was drunk with pride. They believed they were destined to erase the myth and prove themselves as masters of the galaxy. Yet in the shadows of the chamber, not all shared in the joy. There was an old advisor, wrinkled and scarred, who had lived longer than most. His voice was soft but heavy with warning. "My Emperor, do not mock the silence. I have seen the faces of those who fought the humans. I have seen the fear in their eyes. They did not lie, but his words were drowned out by laughter. The generals mocked him. "Old fool, your bones tremble with age. Your eyes are blind. You see ghosts where there are none." And the Emperor silenced the man with a wave of his hand. "Enough, the time for fear has passed, the time for conquest has come." The next morning, the fleets gathered, hundreds of warships lined in formation, their hulls glittering under the light of distant suns. Engines thundered as they prepared to leap into the unknown. The admirals broadcast their strength to the galaxy, letting all who watched know that Corval feared nothing. Across space, other civilizations watched in silence, their leaders pale, their voices hushed. The ancient species whispered warnings to one another. "They will not return," some said. "The humans will answer," but no one dared to interfere. No one dared to stop Corval. They knew the map was written in blood, and they knew what was waiting beyond the edge. The first step into human space was quiet. Too quiet. The fleet crossed the border, sensors scanning, weapons ready, but there was nothing, only the cold dark of the void. The admirals laughed. "You see, there is nothing here. The humans are cowards. They hide in their caves, but not every soldier laughed. Some felt a chill as the stars seemed to shift around them. Some swore they saw shadows moving between the ships, and some heard faint whispers in the static of their comms, whispers that did not belong to any of them. The Emperor's flagship moved boldly ahead, broadcasting victory before a battle had even begun. Yet in the lower decks of the ships, soldiers whispered their fears. One asked, "If the humans are so weak, why does the map stop here?" Another answered in silence because there was no answer. As the fleet pushed deeper, the shadows grew heavier. Supply ships reported strange malfunctions. Escorts went missing and signals dropped into static, but the admirals told them to ignore it. They declared it was nothing but the tricks of deep space. Still, the unease spread like a sickness. The younger soldiers tried to laugh, but their laughter was thin. The older ones prayed in silence. They had heard the stories and they knew what silence meant. Far away beyond their sensors, human eyes were watching. Unseen ships tracked every move, every signal, every laugh, and they waited, patient as ever, for the right moment to strike. The Corval Empire thought they were marching to glory. They thought they were writing history. But they were only marching into a story that had been written many times before. A story every empire that ignored the warning came to know. The galaxy held its breath as the fleet pushed further into the forbidden space, the shadow of silence falling heavier with every passing hour. And though the Corval believed they were the hunters, they were already the prey. And somewhere in the darkness, unseen but certain, the humans prepared to remind the galaxy why the map stopped at their border, and why those who ignored it never returned. The silence was the first weapon. It pressed down on the Corval fleet like an invisible weight, stronger than any gravity. For days they had pushed deeper into human space. For days they had met no resistance, and now the laughter that once filled their halls was gone. Only whispers remained, whispers that carried fear. On the bridge of the Emperor's flagship, the admirals argued. One demanded they press forward. Another said they should turn back before it was too late. But the Emperor silenced them with a glare, his pride greater than his caution. "We are Corval," he said, his voice sharp as a blade, "and we will not tremble at shadows." But shadows were all they saw. Their sensors picked up signals that flickered and vanished, faint movements at the edge of their vision, small shapes darting between stars. Yet when they fired, nothing was there. It was as if the void itself mocked them. The first strike came without warning. A supply ship exploded in fire, ripped apart before it could even cry for help. The fleet spun into chaos, scanning, searching, demanding to see their enemy, but the humans remained unseen. Then another ship was hit, then another. The Corval warships turned their guns in every direction, firing blindly into the void, but their weapons struck only empty space. The human ships appeared only long enough to destroy, then disappeared into darkness like ghosts that refused to be caught. The Corval admirals screamed for order, but fear had already taken root. Soldiers whispered that the humans were demons, that the silence itself was alive. One captain swore he saw a human vessel pass within a heartbeat of his bridge, its weapons glowing red. But before he could react, it was gone. The Emperor ordered the fleet into tight formation, ships pressed together, shields overlapping, their massive fleet now a shining wall of steel and fire. He thought this would protect them, but the humans only smiled in the dark. For humans did not fight as others fought. They did not charge in grand lines. They did not waste time with speeches. They fought like hunters. They fought like survivors. Their small ships slipped through cracks in the fleet's defenses, striking engines, slicing through weak points, vanishing before counterfire could land. The Corval had numbers, they had power, but power meant nothing against speed, against precision, against an enemy that knew every weakness. In the first day of battle, the fleet lost a dozen ships, in the second, twice as many, and by the third, the void was littered with wreckage. What terrified the Corval most was not the human weapons, but the human silence. No message was ever sent, no demand for surrender, no declaration of war, only destruction, only fire and then emptiness. It was not a war. It was an execution. On one ship, a young soldier begged his captain to retreat. "We cannot fight what we cannot see," he cried. But the captain only looked at him with hollow eyes. "We are already dead," he whispered. The humans struck at supply lines. They cut communications. They spread confusion until admirals no longer trusted their own sensors. Ships collided in the dark. Friendly fire tore through their own fleets. The humans had turned the galaxy's proudest warriors into frightened children. At last, the Emperor ordered a counterattack. His entire fleet charged toward the signals of human activity, hundreds of ships moving as one, weapons blazing. For a moment, it looked as if the Corval might overwhelm their unseen enemy. But the humans had planned for this. As the Corval fleet entered the starfield, mines hidden among the rocks ignited. A storm of fire tore through the charging ships. The formation shattered, and in that instant, the human fleet revealed itself. Dozens of warships, sleek and sharp, appeared from the darkness, their hulls black as night, their weapons burning like stars. They moved faster than any ship had the right to move, striking from every angle, tearing through the Corval like hunters through prey. The admirals screamed for retreat, but retreat was impossible. Their engines crippled, their lines shattered. They had nowhere to run. The humans pressed forward, relentless, merciless, their silence louder than any war cry. By the end of the battle, hundreds of Corval ships floated broken. Burning or gone, the survivors huddled in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to move. Their Emperor watched from his shattered bridge, his golden crown darkened by smoke, his pride consumed by fear. For the first time, he understood the truth of the map. The line was not drawn to protect the humans from the galaxy. It was drawn to protect the galaxy from the humans, and in the shadows, unseen but near, the human ships waited, patient as ever, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to remind the galaxy once more. Those who crossed the line would face justice, and justice would come without mercy. The stars themselves seemed to dim as silence fell again, silence heavier than before, silence filled with the knowledge that the war had only just begun, and that the Corval were already losing it. The Corval Empire had fought many wars. They had conquered planets, burned cities, and broken empires, but never had they faced an enemy like this. The humans did not fight as soldiers. They fought as hunters. Their weapons were not only steel and fire, but fear itself in the wreckage of the first battles. Survivors whispered of human ships that appeared without sound, that moved like shadows and struck like lightning. No warning, no mercy, only fire. Admirals gathered in trembling councils, their voices shaking as they argued how to fight an enemy they could not see. But the humans had already chosen the battlefield. They never fought on the terms of their enemy. They fought on their own terms. Every asteroid field became a trap, every dead moon a fortress, every quiet signal a lure to lead ships into an ambush. When Corval fleets tried to regroup, their supply ships went missing. When they sent scouts ahead, those scouts never returned sometimes. A ship would find its missing comrades drifting in space, burned from the inside, their crews gone, their messages silent. The fear grew worse with each passing day, because the humans never spoke. They never announced their presence, they never threatened. Their silence was more terrifying than any roar of war. Soldiers begged their captains to send messages to the humans, to beg for peace, but the captains could not, because no one knew where to send it. The humans used everything as a weapon. They hacked into Corval systems. Their alarms screamed false warnings until no one trusted their own sensors. Fuel depots vanished overnight. Stations were torn apart without leaving a trace. Even the food shipments rotted mysteriously before reaching the fleet. And then came the most terrible discovery of all. When Corval soldiers finally boarded a wrecked human ship, expecting to find answers, they found only bones, charred remains strapped into burned seats. The humans had fought even as their ship was dying, had fired weapons until their bodies turned to ash, and even in death they had taken down 3 enemy cruisers with them. The Corval could not understand this. They could not understand how humans refused to surrender, how they fought even after defeat. To them, war was honor, a show of strength. But to the humans, war was survival. And survival meant using every weapon, every trick, every drop of blood. One admiral, desperate to inspire his soldiers, broadcast a speech across the fleet. He shouted that humans were not demons, that they could be broken like any other species. But his words were cut short when his ship exploded mid-sentence. A human missile had struck his command bridge. His death broadcast across every channel. The silence that followed was heavier than any speech. The Corval began to fear the dark. Their crews refused to travel without every light blazing, but light only made them easier targets. The humans struck at those who tried to hide in brightness, proving that even light itself was not safe. Some ships tried to hide in asteroid belts, but human ships moved through rocks with ease, as if they belonged there. Other ships tried to escape into hyperspace, but their drives were sabotaged, exploding the moment they activated. Every attempt at safety became another trap. The humans did not seek open battles. They broke their enemy slowly, piece by piece, striking supply, striking morale, striking trust. Soon Corval soldiers began turning on one another, accusing their own commanders of treachery. One fleet even destroyed itself in panic, firing at shadows until nothing remained but wreckage. The Emperor raged at the reports, his pride refusing to admit defeat. But even he felt the grip of fear every night. He dreamed of shadows at the edge of his vision. Every morning he woke to news of more ships gone, more fleets erased in the galaxy beyond. Other civilizations watched in silence. They did not cheer. They did not mourn. They only remembered. This was the same fate that had met others before, the same fate that had led to the map's warning. And in human space, the hunters continued their silent war. They did not boast, they did not celebrate. They only struck again and again, until the mighty Corval began to crumble under the weight of fear. The humans did not fight to conquer, they fought to finish. Their way of war was not to win a battle, but to make sure their enemy never had the chance to fight again. They burned supply. They shattered morale. They broke spirit, the galaxy whispered once more. This is the human way of war. And every empire remembered why the line was drawn on the map, and why it had never been crossed without regret. The Corval had entered the forbidden edge with pride and laughter, but now they drifted through the dark like hunted prey, their fleets shrinking, their voices silenced, their hope burned away. And still the humans came, relentless, patient, merciless. The war was no longer about conquest, it was about survival, and only one side knew how to survive the void. The humans had turned fear into a weapon sharper than steel, and the Corval were already bleeding, even before the final blow. The Corval Empire had always believed that power was measured in numbers, the size of fleets, the weight of armies, the firepower of weapons. They had counted their strength in thousands of ships and millions of soldiers, but numbers meant nothing in the void of human space. Here the rules were different. Here the humans decided what power meant. The fleet that once stretched across the stars now moved like a wounded beast, limping from system to system, every jump more desperate than the last. Supply lines were broken, fuel ships destroyed, food stolen or left rotting. Commanders argued over scraps. Soldiers starved in the dark, their eyes hollow, their voices weak. The admirals tried to bring order, but fear had already hollowed their command. No one trusted anyone. Crews muttered that their leaders were cursed. Some whispered that even the stars had turned against them. But all agreed on one truth. The humans were everywhere. They struck without pattern. Sometimes a lone ship vanished. Sometimes an entire squadron was erased in fire. The Corval tried to map the attacks, To predict them, but there was no logic, no mercy. Humans fought like storms, unpredictable, unstoppable. And worst of all, the silence never ended. The humans never spoke, never offered surrender, never revealed their purpose. They only struck, vanished, and waited for the next chance to bleed their prey. It was not war as the Corval understood it. It was judgment by now. The Empire's councils were filled with panic. Messages from the front spoke of endless loss. Fleets reduced to fragments, admirals begging for retreat. But the Emperor forbade it, his pride greater than his reason. "We are Corval," he declared, his voice echoing across his empire. "And we do not kneel to shadows." But shadows did not care for pride, shadows only cared for the hunt. The humans began cutting deeper, not only ships but worlds. When the Corval tried to settle in captured colonies, human strike teams burned their outposts to ash when they built supply stations. Those stations disappeared into fire the next day. No ground was safe, no star was safe. In desperation, the Emperor gathered the remnants of his might, calling every surviving fleet to one place, the edge of the Sol system. He believed that if he could break the humans near their home star, he would shatter their will. He believed he could frighten them into peace. The fleets gathered, hundreds of ships still. Though far fewer than the thousands that once crossed the line, they were scarred, broken, weary, but they came, drawn by the Emperor's command and their own desperate hope. On the eve of battle, the admirals stood before their Emperor, their faces pale, their voices uncertain. One dared to speak. "If we lose here, there will be nothing left, no fleets, no empire." But the Emperor silenced him with a glare. "If we retreat, we are already lost," he said. "If we fight, we still have a chance." So the fleets prepared, shields raised, weapons armed, banners glowing across the dark. The Corval would stake everything on this battle, the last gamble of a dying empire. And then, from the silence, the humans answered. The void rippled as their ships emerged, not in the hundreds but in the thousands. Vessels the Corval had never seen before, black as night, sharp as blades, bristling with weapons older than memory, some as small as hunters, some as massive as cities. They appeared without warning, surrounding the Corval from every side. The admirals gasped in disbelief. "This is impossible," one cried. Where were these ships hiding? But the truth was simple. The humans had never shown their true strength. They had waited, patient, letting fear rot their enemy before revealing the full weight of their power. The battle began like thunder, human ships striking in perfect unity, their weapons burning through Corval shields as if they were paper. Entire lines of battleships crumbled in minutes. Every attempt to counter was swallowed by precision fire. Every desperate charge met with traps and mines. Still, the Corval fought, their ships blazing, their warriors screaming defiance. But for every human ship they destroyed, 10 more appeared, relentless, merciless, unstoppable. The void was filled with fire, with wreckage, with screams swallowed by static. From his flagship, the Emperor watched in silence, his golden armor cracked, his eyes wide. For the first time he saw the truth. The humans had never been weak. They had never been fragile. They had simply been waiting, hiding their strength until arrogance drew fools into their space. The battle raged for hours, but the end was certain from the start. The Corval fleet shattered, their survivors fleeing in every direction, only to be hunted down by the human ships. No quarter given, no escape allowed. This was not a battle for victory. It was a battle for extinction. At last, the Emperor's flagship was surrounded, his remaining admirals begging him to surrender. But before he could speak, before he could command, the humans struck. A single barrage tearing through the heart of the ship. Fire swallowed the throne, and with it, the pride of Corval. The galaxy felt the tremor. The Corval Empire had been broken. Their fleets erased, their leaders destroyed, their power crumbled to ash, and still, the humans did not speak. They did not boast. They only returned to silence, as if the battle had never happened. But the silence spoke louder than any words. It told the galaxy that the map was true, that the line was not to protect humans from others, but to protect others from humans, and those who ignored it faced justice, swift and final. The wreckage of the Corval drifted in the void near Sol, a monument to arrogance, a warning to all who looked upon it. And in the quiet of the stars, the humans vanished once more, unseen, patient, waiting for the next empire foolish enough to test the forbidden edge. The battlefield near Sol was nothing but wreckage now. Twisted metal drifted like ghosts across the void, thousands of Corval ships reduced to broken husks, their banners burned, Their voices silenced, and in that silence, a single truth spread across the galaxy. The Corval Empire was no more. For the first time in centuries, the humans revealed themselves. Their ships moved through the wreckage like predators surveying the aftermath of the hunt. But they did not collect trophies. They did not raise flags. They did not sing of victory. They only cleaned the battlefield with a cold precision, as if war was nothing but a necessary task. Survivors from the Corval fleets floated in crippled escape pods, their voices begging across open channels. "Spare us, we surrender. We yield." But the humans never answered. The pods were gathered, the survivors taken, yet no one knew what became of them. Some said they were executed. Others whispered they were released into the void. But the truth remained hidden, like everything else about mankind. When the news reached the wider galaxy, shock turned into fear. Empires that had once mocked the warning line now trembled at its edge. Leaders who once laughed in council chambers now spoke in whispers. The Corval had been proud, powerful, arrogant, and now they were ashes. Their homeworld silent, their name cursed. The oldest civilizations remembered, and they shivered, for they had seen this before. The humans had always fought like this, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to destroy any who dared bring war to them. It was not victory. It was judgment. Then, for the first time in living memory, humanity spoke. A single broadcast transmitted across every channel in the galaxy. Their voice calm, steady, without pride or rage, only truth. "The line is not drawn to protect us," the message said. "It is drawn to protect you from us." The words echoed in every council chamber, every throne room, every ship. Some leaders raged at the arrogance. Some trembled at the warning, but none could deny the truth. The wreckage of Corval was proof enough, the humans continued. "We do not seek conquest, we do not seek empire. But if you bring war across the line, we will end it. And we will end you," the message ended. Silence returned, and the galaxy felt colder than before. Because now the legends were no longer whispers. Now they were truth spoken by humanity itself. On distant worlds, children asked their parents why the map stopped at human space. And the parents, once uncertain, now answered with fear. Because those who ignore the line do not return. Traders who once dreamed of new routes turned back before reaching the border. Soldiers who once boasted of their strength fell quiet when the name of humans was spoken. The ruins of the Corval Empire stood as a warning. Their colonies abandoned, their cities empty, their fleets broken. Other empires sent scouts to investigate, but most never returned. Those who did brought back stories of silence, of shadows, of human ships still watching, still waiting, yet in the shadows of fear, some still whispered rebellion. Young empires who had never tasted defeat muttered that the humans could not be invincible, that the galaxy could not live forever in fear of one species. But their voices were hushed quickly, for no one dared to test the silence again. Among the survivors of Corval, those who had seen the human way of war firsthand, stories spread in secret. They spoke of human ships appearing without warning, of human soldiers fighting even when death was certain, of commanders who never smiled, never shouted, only gave calm orders while fire consumed the stars. These survivors carried scars not only on their bodies but in their souls. They spoke of humans not as monsters, but as justice given flesh. One survivor described it simply, his eyes hollow, his voice weak. "They did not hate us. They did not enjoy it, they only ended us, like a fire smothering sparks, as if it was their duty, not their desire." The galaxy listened. And the galaxy feared. Meanwhile, within human space, life returned to silence. Their fleets vanished back into the void, their colonies quiet. Their people unseen, they did not expand. They did not send out diplomats or demand tribute. They simply withdrew as if nothing had happened, as if the war had been nothing more than a chore. But the silence was heavier now, because every empire knew what it meant. Humanity was not gone. They were watching, they were waiting, they would always wait. Justice had been delivered, swift and final, and now the galaxy understood the warning carved on the map. The line was not a border of peace, it was a border of judgment. And so the stars grew quiet, empires whispering in fear. And across the endless void, the humans remained unseen, patient, merciless, ready for the day another fool would cross the forbidden line and force them to bring justice once more. The galaxy never forgot the fall of Corval. Their banners once shone across the stars. Their fleets once filled the void with fire. But now their name was only spoken in whispers, as a warning, as a curse. Their wreckage drifted silently at the edge of Seoul, a graveyard that reminded everyone of the line carved on every map. The warning was passed like an old prayer. Never cross into human space, do not test the silence. Do not bring war to the forbidden edge. Traders who once dreamed of riches turned their ships away. Soldiers who once boasted of conquest looked down when the word human was spoken. The galaxy lived in fear, but also in memory. For humanity had not claimed glory. They had not raised banners over conquered worlds. They had not demanded tribute. They had only fought, crushed, and returned to silence. This frightened the galaxy more than any empire because humans wanted nothing. They sought no throne, they offered no terms. They only gave one lesson: justice without mercy on distant worlds. Stories spread among the young. Children gathered around star maps and asked why there was a blank space, why no one explored it. Their elders told them the truth. That is where the humans live, and if you cross that line, you will not return. The children listened, wide-eyed, some with fear, some with curiosity. Curiosity was dangerous, for not all believed the silence. Some young empires, proud and reckless, began to whisper in secret. They said the Corval had been fools. They said the humans were only myth dressed as truth. They said no species could be that strong, that relentless. They dreamed of proving themselves by doing what no one dared. In one council chamber, far from Sol, a young emperor leaned over the glowing map, his advisors trembling. "If humans are so powerful," he asked, his voice smooth with arrogance, "why do they stay in their cage? Why do they not rule the galaxy?" His generals exchanged fearful glances. None dared answer, but the emperor laughed. Perhaps they are weak, perhaps their silence hides fear. His words spread like sparks among the young and the foolish. Prideful species began to see the forbidden edge not as a warning, but as a challenge, not as a curse, but as a chance to prove their strength. They dreamed of glory, of fame, of breaking the silence, yet the oldest species, those who had fought humanity in forgotten wars, those who bore scars etched deep into their bones, they shivered at the whispers. They warned, "Do not test them, do not wake them. Leave the silence untouched." But the young do not listen to the old. Pride does not listen to wisdom. Meanwhile, in the heart of human space, there was only quiet, their ships unseen, their voices unheard, their people hidden from the galaxy's gaze. But those who studied carefully noticed small signs, strange signals flickering at the edges of sensors, shadows moving in star fields where no ship should be, whispers in the static of long-range comms. It was as if the humans were still watching, still listening, waiting for the next empire foolish enough to cross. And the galaxy asked itself a question that burned in every council, every throne room, every starport. What if someone tries again? What if another empire ignores the line? Would the humans rise once more? Would justice come again in hidden places? Smugglers and wanderers swore they had seen human ships, black and sharp, gliding silently through the void. They swore the humans were not hiding but patrolling, guarding the line like hunters guarding their territory, ready to strike. The galaxy grew restless, torn between fear and arrogance. The old whispered warnings, the young whispered challenges, and the silence of human space grew heavier. One night in a distant empire's chamber, a young prince stared at the forbidden edge, his voice soft but filled with dangerous curiosity. "What if we cross?" he asked. "What if we see what lies beyond?" His advisors begged him to forget, but his smile only grew sharper, and so the galaxy trembled once more, because history has a way of repeating itself. Pride has a way of blinding reason, and silence has a way of luring the reckless. The forbidden edge still waits. The line still glows on every map, and the humans are still there, unseen, patient, merciless. They do not seek war, but they do not forgive it either. The galaxy may forget the lesson, but humanity never forgets. They remember every empire that crossed the line, every fleet that vanished into silence, every fool who thought themselves strong enough, and when the next comes, the humans will rise again, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as judgment. And so the final whisper carries across the stars, carried by traders, carved into maps, spoken as warning to the young. Never cross the human line, but somewhere, in the shadows, another voice answers, proud, arrogant, reckless. What if we try? The galaxy holds its breath, for it knows what the silence means. It knows what waits beyond, and it knows that justice, when it comes, will come without mercy and without end.